A hand reaches toward the light. He's waited for this exact moment forever. He wakes up to an unfamiliar ceiling and sensations he's never felt before. He realizes he's finally done it. Transmigration, possession, whatever you want to call it, it actually worked. Back on Earth, Kim Se-woo had spent way too long preparing for this leap. He had consumed every book, web novel, and game out there to be ready. He didn't just read them. He was obsessed with every single series that caught his eye. He'd drop massive, 5,000-character reviews just to tear a story apart. Day in and day out, he meticulously analyzed every plot point from every possible angle. Plot armor, world-building, character tropes, he knew them all like the back of his hand. He had memorized every secret item location and character relationship in the business. Most of his efforts just ended up as a pile of digital waste, though. Authors would quit because of him, and he got banned from every community for being a legendary hater. But in the end, the hater won. He's officially moved into a whole new world. He takes his first look at a humble village under a clear blue sky. He's in a 4-year-old's body, so it's time to check the standard starter kit. He reaches out and calls for the status window, expecting the usual RPG screen. Nothing happens, just a quiet, empty room and a lot of confusion. Looks like this isn't one of those generic regression stories after all. He remembers that plenty of the series he reviewed didn't bother with game mechanics either. Plan B, then. He'll just invent something from the modern world and get filthy rich. 1 week has passed since he took over this body. He finds out his new identity is Ivan Petrovich, living in a simple peasant village. Ivan's father and mother are just tenant farmers who can't even read or tell you what country they're in. He tries to innovate by making soap from scratch, but it goes south immediately. Not only does he get a spanking for making a mess, but turns out soap already existed in this world. 6 weeks have passed since the possession began. While out on an errand, he spots something that completely changes his perspective. If this world has the infrastructure to print and distribute newspapers to the boonies, things are advanced. This definitely isn't the Middle Ages. He has no idea what kind of world he's actually in. He starts crossing off titles from his mental list of possible stories he could be in. 15 weeks have passed since he arrived. He finally learns the name of the kingdom and the king ruling over them. Realizing his list is useless, he tears up the last few pages and tosses them into the fire. The country, the ruler, and even the neighbors are all completely foreign to him. By age 8, his main concern is figuring out what genre this story even is. 4 years into the possession, and things are about to get heavy. Out of nowhere, the Demon King descends with an army of monsters. His father tells him and Ivan's mother to stay put while the village is in chaos. But Ivan's father doesn't get to fight monsters. He gets rounded up by conscription officers. Mother and son watch as he's hauled off to a war that's only just beginning. At this moment, Kim Se-woo starts to lose himself to the grim reality of Ivan's life. 6 years since the possession, and the prologue is finally over. Ivan follows his mother's lead and gets used to the daily grind of farm work. 8 years have passed since he first possessed this body. He spends his rare free time studying the local writing system until he finally masters it. At age 14, 10 years into his new life, a major turning point hits. A grim notice arrives at their simple home. It's official, his father has died in the war. The weird part is that the notice was issued 2 years ago, and it's only just reaching them now. Ivan's world starts to crumble as he realizes the tropes he knows aren't applying here. It's an isekai world, but it's got steam engines and gunpowder weapons mixed in. With knights, mages, and a demon king all in a total war, he wonders what the hell kind of genre he's actually in. He looks over at his mother, seeing her completely broken by the news. She's sobbing, her world destroyed. She can't believe this is happening, left alone with her young son. The very next day, Ivan makes a life-changing decision. He heads to the train station to enlist in the military. His annual salary of 15 copper coins will be sent directly to his mother. It wasn't about being a hero or filial devotion. He just felt bad for the woman who'd given everything for him. There was also a lingering guilt about living in the body of her actual son. 4 years into his service, 18-year-old Ivan is deep in the trenches. Turns out, he's a natural-born killer with a talent for violence he never expected. After racking up kills and small victories, he becomes a regular soldier rather than a disposable conscript. Despite his efforts, the front lines keep getting pushed back and half the world is on fire. And right around that time, a literal hero appears on the battlefield. It looks like a classic RPG-style story is finally kicking off. The hero's arrival offers a bit of hope, but the reality for the normal soldiers is still a nightmare. On Ivan's front line, they're still getting absolutely wrecked by massive monsters. 24 years into his possession, Ivan is now 28. While the hero party takes out the big bosses, the overall tide of the war starts to turn. Thanks to his military achievements, Ivan is assigned to a specialized unit working near the hero party. They're essentially the cleanup crew for the territory the heroes reclaim. They call it the Extermination Squad, the ones who do the dirty work in the chaos. While the hero party gets the glory of killing commanders, Ivan's unit moves in to wipe out the rest. 2 more years pass, and at age 30, Ivan has been a soldier for 16 years. The hero party finally finishes the job and slays the Demon King. Ivan sticks around, waiting for the ending credits to roll so he can finally leave. He's done his time and just wants to escape this miserable world once and for all. 2 more years go by. He's 32 now, 28 years into this possession. The Demon King is dead, but life just keeps grinding on. There is no magical ending. Meanwhile, his squad has been ground down to a fraction of its original size. Ivan spent decades as a killing machine, and it's finally taking its toll. He sees through High Command's plan to disband the unit and takes on one last suicide mission. After surviving the impossible, he immediately hands in his papers for discharge. Hopping even this endless epilogue would finally end. Age 34, year 30 since possession. It had also been 10 years since his mother passed away. When he returned home after the war, he was completely alone. To find some purpose, Ivan founded an orphanage near the capital and took in children orphaned by the war. Still, even now, to this very day, there were no ending credits in sight at the St. Vasilicia orphanage. Ivan lets out a weary sigh while sitting in his study. He spends his nights writing in a journal, pouring out his frustrations. I miss it, I really do. I miss it so much I'm going crazy, he writes, his hand gripped tight around the pen. It's already been 4 years since the Demon King died, so when the hell is this story going to end? He wonders if the ending condition is something as ridiculous as the hero dies of old age. Suddenly, the sound of rhythmic footsteps echoes down the hallway. Ivan stops and listens, his senses immediately sharpening. That specific sound, it's familiar. He can tell from the rasp of leather and the smell of gunpowder that it's a well-trained soldier. Just one person. Ivan grips his weapon, prepared for anything as he stares at the door. The door creaks open. A man in a blue uniform steps in with a cheerful salute. Long time no see, sir. You've been well, right? Ivan isn't in the mood for pleasantries, keeping his axe held high. You should have knocked. Dmitri laughs it off, commenting on how Ivan's beard doesn't really suit him. Get to the point, Ivan growls. Dmitri reaches into his coat. We haven't seen each other in ages, and you won't even let me sit down, still impatient as ever. He pulls out an envelope with a red seal. Just read it. It's a personal letter from the princess herself. Ivan stares at it suspiciously. What is there poison in it? Dmitri just gestures for him to open it. Ivan realizes it's from Her Highness Elizaveta Kirillovna Krasilov. Ivan knows there's no way Lisa the Iron-Blooded is just checking in. He realizes things must be bad, very bad. The military is begging every day to be allowed to pull out. Meanwhile, Crown Prince Alexander is trying to carve up the country into 5 pieces and sell it off. And His Majesty, the Great King, still just sits there without saying a word about the chaos. Dmitri tries to lighten the mood. Then, at a time like this, ta-da! He brings up Yansk University. a prestigious international university founded during the war. He starts listing the new arrivals. First is Isabel, the daughter of hero Maximilian. Then there's Oscar, the son of the legendary knight Gilles Ver. Joining them is Elpihara, the daughter of mage Baelgrin, and the daughter of berserker Einar, a girl named Esides. Even the next generation of rogues is there, Lucia, the apprentice of Enrique. To top it off, Patricia, the saint of the former hero party, is coming in as the new department chair. Promising young people from all over the world are flocking to enroll early. Dimitri's expression turns serious. Considering what these children represent, their safety is paramount. "What do you need me to do?" Ivan asks. Dimitri replies, "This country would be finished if even one of them were hurt." Dimitri holds up 3 fingers. "Just protect them for 3 years. Keep these kids from suffering so much as a scratch." Ivan is stunned. What kind of ending is this for a hero story? He wonders. The world is a powder keg, and now, an academy arc out of nowhere. Ivan's mind races as he tries to process the sudden shift in reality. Wait a second, he thinks, his eyes wide with shock. This can't be right. He slams his hands onto the desk, his body erupting with a furious red aura that startles Dimitri. F***CK. Ivan curses under his breath, the wood of the table groaning under his strength. He can't believe it, this legendary journey, this epic life he's led. It was all just a setup for an academy story. Dimitri flinches, looking genuinely worried. "Sir, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Ivan just stares back, his mind in turmoil. "Am I okay?" Awen repeats. He spent 30 years being put through the absolute ringer in this other world, and all of it had been the prologue. Then, a new resolve begins to form in his eyes as he stares at the splintered wood of his desk. So all he has to do is get those kids to graduate. Let's go see the ending, he thinks. Ivan stands tall, his eyes glowing with an intense blue light. "I will carry out the order. Let's go home, Kim Sianwoo." The letter from the princess continues in his mind. "Vanka, have you been well? I've heard news of you now and then. Seems you've been doing fine. Do you remember when we struggled together to tend the garden?" The image of a grand, pristine garden appears in the distance. "I'd hoped we could all have tea together again, but you really left without ever looking back. The memory of the palace is bittersweet. But Vanka, winter is coming again, a colder, quieter winter than the last one. A lone figure in a blue dress stands in a snowy garden. A pale hand reaches out to touch the leaves of a frost-covered bush. Vanka, my most trusted woodcutter." The princess stands alone in the vast courtyard of the palace. "If there's something you want, I'll repay you threefold without fail. And if that's not enough to cover it, I'll make up the rest with our friendship." Her silhouette is framed by a large window. "And if that still doesn't settle the debt, I'll pay with our memories." She looks out at the kingdom she is destined to rule. "The kingdom still needs your devotion, as it always has and always will." Her voice echoes in the quiet room as Ivan finishes the letter. "With affection, Kirilovna." Ivan sits back down, looking at Dimitri. "I've read it all to sum it up. For the 3 years until the hero party's children graduate university, I'm to make sure no one dies or gets hurt." He pictures the young heroes-to-be. "So this world's genre turned out to be an academy story," he mutters, his expression unreadable. "So if I just hold out 3 more years and see the ending, I get to go home." Ivan looks Dimitri dead in the eye. "Dimitri, who's arriving first?" Dimitri replies, "It's Einar's daughter, Senior. They say King Drone's own child is set to depart first." Einar, Ivan repeats the name, a grim focus taking over his features. The journey continues. This massive guy is Einar. Nowadays he's known as the King of Drone, but Ivan remembers him differently. Back in the previous hero party, he was just a madman who lived to swing a giant axe. And now, the first person heading off to the academy from his kingdom is none other than that madman's daughter. The people of Drone are convinced she's going to conquer the world just like her father. They're cheering her on at the station, thinking she's off to do something epic. But the girl isn't heading to a battlefield. She's actually going to study music. Meet Esides, the eldest daughter of the berserker Einar. She's clearly not thrilled about the teasing. She's determined to show everyone exactly how successful she can be in the city. Esides is officially enrolling in the music department, at the prestigious Yansk University. 2 days later, the train is steaming through the snowy mountains. In a normal story, this is usually where the trouble starts. Like a sudden explosion derailing the whole thing, a classic setup. Dmitri is skeptical, but Ivan is dead certain a terrorist attack is coming. He's seen this play out before. He knows it because he's realized the genre of his world has shifted. It's an academy story now. In a hero story, the party just teams up and kills the Demon King. Simple and clean. They even get one of the enemy generals to flip sides and join the team. It's a total cliché. The war ends, the world finds peace, and everyone lives happily ever after. Or so the books say. But every genre has its own set of rules and common sense, formulas that everyone just calls clichés. Ivan remembers the reference books he burned 30 years ago. He knows the patterns by heart now. He's currently waiting at Igorvich Station. A terrorist attack on the student train is basically mandatory. He sits on the platform, blending in while he waits for the train to roll in. It's all just common sense to him. It's exactly 9 o'clock. The train carrying Acides should be arriving any minute. This station is right on the border, making it the perfect spot for an ambush. He scans the crowd. Past this point is a high-security military zone. If they're going to frame the kingdom, they have to hit it here. Ivan stands up. He didn't ask for backup because he has zero proof, just a gut feeling based on bad writing. But as he looks around, he realizes these terrorists are incredibly sloppy. It's almost insulting. There's a guy on a bench who has been checking his watch and letting trains pass for hours. Dead giveaway. And then there's the vegetable seller smoking a cigarette while looking nervous in a deserted station. Who is he even selling to? Ivan starts walking. He's already identified his first target. The man on the bench realizes someone is standing behind him. He starts to sweat. Ivan doesn't waste time. He draws his gun and presses the barrel right against the back of the guy's head. The man freezes, his hands shaking. He's completely cornered. Ivan looks down at him with those glowing blue eyes. He isn't here to play games. The fake vegetable seller and another accomplice jump up, shouting in total shock. They didn't see this coming. Ivan stays calm. He's already figured out their angles. From where they're standing, they can't even see his gun. He decides to give the guy one last chance. He asks him where his loyalty lies. The man on the bench can't even form a sentence. He just stammers in terror. A single shot echoes through the station. Ivan doesn't hesitate for a second. The target is blown right off the bench, blood spraying everywhere. It's a clean kill. The other two agents aren't reinforcements. They aren't royal guards either. They're just part of the same sloppy cell. A real pro would have stated their rank immediately. Instead, these guys just hesitated. That's all Ivan needed to know. The remaining two pull their weapons, screaming at Ivan to die. They're panicking now. But they're way too slow. Ivan is already a blur of motion, moving in to finish the job. Ivan pulls a hatchet and goes to work, taking out the first gunman before the guy can even blink. He pivots instantly, a blur of motion as he carves through the second man with cold, military precision. These guys never stood a chance. Within seconds, the entire station group has been dismantled. They clearly haven't faced a real powerhouse before, and Ivan is showing them exactly what that looks like. The fake vegetable seller falls to the floor, screaming in absolute agony as he looks at where his arm used to be. Ivan stands over the bodies, completely unfazed. He bluntly tells the guy he's going to bleed out in 3 minutes unless he starts talking. He doesn't waste time on threats. He just wants to know one thing: where are the others? Terrified and sobbing, the scout blabs that there are 15 more men waiting on the tracks. He even tries to bargain for his life by offering to help. Ivan barely registers the pathetic begging. He's already done the math. These guys were just the scouting unit. This guy's begging for his life, promising Ivan he'll be useful if he just lets him go. He starts spilling everything, saying the train is carrying gold bullion and trade goods from drone. He thinks he's home free since he answered everything, but Ivan's just walking closer with that cold look. Ivan isn't buying it. He says there was a lie mixed in, and the guy's face just drops. The lie, the part about him being useful, Ivan finishes him off without a second thought. It's 9:53 in the morning. Ivan starts putting on his gloves to clean up. For an Extermination Squad pro, 5 minutes is all it takes to scrub a crime scene. By 9:58, the platform is spotless, perfect timing since the train pulls in at 10. He's finished with plenty of time to spare, looking like he just did some light gardening instead of a massacre. Back at the palace, the conversation turns to Ivan Petrovich. Princess Elizaveta is getting the report. Her man says Ivan knew exactly when and where the attack would happen. She wonders if he's got a mole, but the guy confirms they've seen zero signs of informants for 4 years. The officer is confused by her reaction, but Elizaveta just lets out a soft laugh. She orders him to track every single thing Ivan does. She wants the full play-by-play. This is the iron-blooded princess herself, and she wants to be able to check in on him whenever she feels like it. She's watching him closely. Even if he's just guessing, she knows he's acting with a weird kind of confidence. To her, it feels like he has a certain certainty about how things will play out. Meanwhile, out in the mountains, a finger hovers over a detonator. See, in Academy stories, there's a predictable script. Acides is just sitting there on the train, totally unaware. The script says the protagonist never gets hurt in a train attack. The tracks are rigged with enough dynamite to level a bridge. To Ivan, this is just a tutorial event meant to kick off the main story. The trigger gets pulled. The bridge goes up in a massive fireball. Acides can only scream as the train derails, exactly like the tutorial predicted. The bandit leader is already gloating, ready to loot the wreckage. Ivan is already on the move through the snow. He knows this group won't last long once the school year starts. Smoke and debris fill the air as the train settles. This is what Ivan does best, cleaning up threats from the shadows to avoid a full-scale war. He opens fire. This is the Extermination Squad way, fast, clean, and lethal. The locomotive is a total wreck, burning at the bottom of the ravine. The bandits think they've hit the jackpot, cheering about how rich they're gonna be. The bandit leader is already planning to melt down the royal gold and sell it on the black market. Suddenly a shot rings out, and a bullet whizzes right past the leader's face. One of his guys takes a direct hit to the head before he even knows what's happening. The rest of them scramble in a panic. Only the weak get startled by gunshots they didn't see coming. A bald thug yells out, demanding to know who's attacking them. Ivan is standing right there in the open, but they don't stand a chance. They don't have line of fire detection. Ivan walks toward them with total calm. He's already identified the leader. The boss freaks out and tells his men to just start shooting. Ivan's eyes glow with intensity as he locks onto his targets. He activates line of fire detection, seeing every bullet path before they're even fired. Ivan explains that guns are totally useless against people who have reached a certain level of strength. That's because every weapon carries the user's killing intent, making it easy to track. If you're holding a sword, you can mask that intent with mana, but with projectiles like bullets, it's almost impossible. This is exactly why none of the heavy hitters in the hero party ever bothered with firearms. Well, except for the Extermination Squad. For them, every member carries a pistol as standard gear. Ivan uses that advantage to drop another bandit with a clean headshot. His job is to assess the enemy's strength and systematically eliminate the weak ones. The bandit leader loses it, calling him a bastard as he lunges with a knife. He demands to know who sent him, but Ivan just maneuvers around him like he's moving in slow motion. A quick counter sends the leader reeling. Ivan doesn't give him a second to breathe, pinning him down with clinical precision. He slams the guy into the snowy ground, creating a small crater. The leader is a mess, barely able to grunt out a response while Ivan looms over him. He tries to act tough, saying he's memorized Ivan's face and will get his revenge later. Ivan just stands there calmly, axe and gun in hand. In his head, he's already classified this guy as nothing more than a tutorial boss. Since he's meant for the actual protagonist to defeat later, Ivan has no intention of killing him right now. But he still needs answers, so he tells the guy to speak up if he wants to keep his limbs working. To do this, he uses techniques he's perfected over decades. He knows countless ways to make someone talk. Suddenly, we cut back to a much warmer place, where a voice is shouting, "Absolutely not." Esides is laying down the law, telling her father not to even think about following her. She threatens to disown him on the spot as she stomps out the door with her instrument case. Her father, King Einar, is left sweating, but then a light bulb goes off in his head. If she can't see them, then it's technically not following, right? He gathers his elite warriors to explain the plan. He yells out, asking which one of his warriors is stealthy enough to protect Esides without her ever noticing. These guys are Huskarls, legendary warriors who treat their lord like a brother. They were once a band of killers, but now they're bound by loyalty to Einar. The problem is, Esides knows every single one of their faces, so a normal disguise won't work. Einar changes tactics and asks who among them can chase down a speeding train on foot. They all shout in unison, offering nothing but pure, unadulterated loyalty. These Huskarls are the best of the best in the kingdom of Drone. Einar is pumped. Now he just needs to find one of them who can actually pass the entrance exams at Yansk University. He asks the group who's confident enough to handle a written exam. The entire room goes dead silent. For these guys, a written test is a fate worse than death. One hand slowly goes up into the air. It's Mord Eriksson. He steps forward, ready to take on the scholarly challenge for his Jarl. His brothers are moved to tears by his sacrifice, cheering him on like he's going off to war. Einar is ecstatic, declaring that from this moment on, Mord is a freshman in the physical education department. Mord is dead serious about it, swearing to protect Esides with his life. We jump back 2 months to the academy grounds. Mord actually managed to pass the entrance exam and got admitted to the school. Of course, he barely scraped by on the written exam, looking like he was having a stroke trying to solve basic math. While Mord struggled with the books, he set a new record in the practical physical test, making his admission possible. The academy instructors were absolutely floored by his sheer physical prowess. They couldn't believe a mere student could have such impossible stamina. Then again, he wasn't just any student, he was a Huskarl. Fast forward to a snowy day in January. A massive explosion rocks a train track. After chasing a train for 2 straight days without resting or sleeping, Mord had become a freshman PE student. Driven by pure determination, he roared out for Esides, ready to crush anyone who dared touch his nephew. Inside the derailed train, a young woman groans in pain amidst the smoke. It's Esides, clutching her head in confusion as she tries to figure out what happened. She realizes with horror that they've been attacked by bandits. She panics, remembering she specifically told her father she'd disown anyone who followed her, leaving her without a single escort. She hears a noise and gasps, looking over at her instrument case. She hugs the case tightly, calling it clanky and thanking goodness it's safe. Her moment of relief is short-lived, as a shadow looms over the broken carriage. The door is ripped away, and Esides shrieks in terror as someone intrudes on her hiding spot. She trembles, clutching Clanky as she stares up at her captor. A sinister chuckle echoes through the wreckage. Hey. Outside, the bandit leader groans in agony as Ivan Petrovich stands over him. The bandit begs for death, unable to take the pain any longer. Ivan calmly assures him he won't die yet. Ivan tells the man to stop saying such frightening things, while looming over him with a cold stare. The bandit leader screams as Ivan begins his interrogation. The man pleads for it to stop as Ivan uncorks a vial of glowing green liquid. The bandit howls in pain as the liquid touches his wounds. Ivan wonders what frontline soldiers hate most. Is it army rations, senior officers, the enemy? No, it's something much worse for someone in pain. Healing potions. Those who have truly experienced pain understand the nightmare of instant recovery. Ivan remembers his own past, screaming at doctors to just cut his arm off rather than endure the healing process. The nurses had to remind him that his body was a national treasure, even as he thrashed on the bed. He roared in defiance, wondering who would treat a treasure with such agonizing medicine. That was a memory from his inexperienced youth, a time of raw suffering. Back then, the nurse would tell him to endure just one more bottle, not that she was going to stop either way. This medicine compresses all the pain of natural recovery into a single, excruciating instant. It's essentially the ultimate torture tool. After experiencing it himself, Ivan found a new way to use it, for interrogation. Even his squad was impressed by his ruthlessness. Heal, interrogate, and heal again. The bandit's screams are never-ending. It was the perfect truth serum. The bandit breaks, sobbing that he doesn't know anything else and just wants to die. Ivan coldly tells him he has to live. After all, he's just a tutorial boss. No reason to kill him yet. If the man can't remember who ordered the attack, then he's truly just a low-level grunt. Ivan kindly drags him back to the train. Ivan's eyes narrow as he wonders if they placed a memory suppression spell on the guy. Something is definitely off. Suddenly he senses something and looks up. Line of fire. He traces the trajectory in his mind. Where is he aiming? Between my eyes? No. He realizes the target isn't just his eyes, but his entire face. A massive projectile is heading straight for him. Boom! A giant boulder smashes into the ground right where Ivan was standing. Ivan barely flinches as he stares through the dust. There's no need to even try firing a gun at this. Multiple boulders rain down from the ridge. Judging by how he threw that, he's stronger than expected, Ivan notes. The ground trembles as massive boulders rain down, creating a chaotic screen of dust and debris. From the heart of the explosion, a silent silhouette emerges, walking through the settling haze. Ivan watches the figure approach, his glowing eyes scanning the terrain. He realizes this new foe possesses the same line-of-fire detection he does. He doesn't bother with a formal greeting, simply ordering the hidden attacker to step out into the open. Footsteps crunch heavily in the snow, leaving glowing red trails in their wake. Mord Eriksson steps forward, his shirtless, muscular frame wreathed in a fierce red aura. He begrudgingly admits Ivan is quite skilled. Ivan readies his dual axes. He hasn't even broken a sweat yet, but he knows he can't take this lightly. Mord is livid, accusing Ivan of targeting his niece. To him, anyone this strong who resorts to such crimes is nothing but a fool. Ivan realizes his error. The bandit he defeated was just small fry. This man is the real threat he should have been looking for. He shifts his stance, his expression hardening as he prepares for a direct confrontation. If this man truly is the leader, Ivan is determined to beat the truth out of him. Without another word, Mord explodes into motion, swinging his massive axe with terrifying speed. The blow is devastating, carving a white arc through the air as it crashes down towards Ivan. Ivan's eyes narrow as he tracks the path of the axe. Something about this man's power feels anomalous. The impact is far heavier than he anticipated. This opponent's strength is completely off the charts for a supposedly low-level zone. He skillfully parries the strike, though the vibrations rattle his very bones. They trade blows in a blur of motion. Ivan begins to doubt his own memory of how this tutorial was supposed to play out. Mord follows up with a sweeping strike, his red aura intensifying with every second of the fight. Ivan wonders if someone else is manipulating these events from the shadows, making things much more dangerous than they should be. Their weapons clash with a violent burst of energy, neither side willing to yield an inch. Ivan recalls that Princess Esides is meant to be a future companion of the protagonist, making her safety paramount. Mord's rage reaches its peak as he screams for his niece, desperate to save her from what he thinks is a bandit attack. Driven by his protective instinct, Mord puts everything into his next assault, convinced he must kill Ivan to reach her. The surrounding wreckage of the train carriage shudders under the pressure of their escalating battle. Meanwhile, inside the derailed train, two assassins are closing in on their prey. Esides is trapped inside the carriage, cornered by the attackers. The bandits are leering at her, thinking they've found an easy target among the survivors. But a heavy instrument case to the face quickly changes their minds. Esides snaps, slamming the violin case into a bandit's head with everything she's got. The sheer force of the blow sends the whole group flying through the air. The survivors are frozen, staring at their buddies hanging from the wreckage. She's trembling as she looks at her cracked violin. The peaceful musician is gone. She's sobbing over her clanky, but her face is terrifying enough to make a grown man pray. It makes sense, considering her father is Einar the Slaughterer. That bloodline doesn't produce peaceful daughters. She whispers a final goodbye to the instrument while her bloodlust reaches its peak. The bandits are panicking, scrambling over each other to get as far away from her as possible. She doesn't give them the chance. The heavy case swings again. She lunges forward, fully embracing the chaos she's creating. Her eyes glow red as she charges. The strongest music student on Earth has officially entered the fight. Outside, Mord Eriksson hears the screaming and stops mid-battle, his eyes wide with worry. Another bandit gets launched through the carriage like a ragdoll. They're in full retreat now, convinced that the girl is a complete monster. Outside, amidst the battle between the two men, Ivan and Mord both froze at this new development. They just stared at the bandits scattering like terrified chicks, unable to process what was actually happening. They finally take a breather when Ivan starts shouting about a red-haired girl. Mord was desperate to know if his niece was safe, looking like he was at his breaking point. Both of them looked back at each other, realizing that they seemed to share the same goal. Ivan looks back at the bandit he was healing and starts to put the pieces together. It's a classic academy story cliché. The helper always shows up during the train ambush. Ivan realizes he almost killed the protagonist's backup. Mord is still fuming, demanding to know why Ivan was on the same side as the attackers. Ivan tries to clear the air, but Mord isn't convinced after seeing him use a healing potion on an enemy. Using medical supplies for interrogation was a trick Ivan picked up in the Extermination Squad, even if his old bosses thought he was crazy for it. He explains he was just digging for info, and the big guy finally realizes he might have overreacted. But before they can finish their chat, something else nearby catches Mord's attention. Esides stands in the clearing, her eyes glowing as she clutches her instrument case. Mord is relieved to see his niece made it out in one piece, even if she looks a bit stunned to see him. Watching from the shadows, Ivan remembers the first time he encountered Esides 7 years ago. In a flashback, a younger Esides runs toward him with a huge smile, calling him her uncle. He's glad the girl is safe, but Ivan knows she's sharp enough that he can't risk hanging around. Having his secret identity exposed this early would cause way more trouble than it's worth. Esides stops suddenly, looking like she sensed someone familiar nearby. She asks her uncle if someone was just there, but Ivan has already disappeared into the night. Mord stays silent, his eyes narrowing as he thinks about the man he just fought. The way that stranger fought was a perfect copy of the Krasilov Special Operations style. Specifically, those axe moves were way too similar to how the legendary Einar fights. Mord realizes only one person could have mastered those techniques to such a high level. There was only ever one man who fit that description, the hero candidate Ivan Petrovich. Mord asks her if she remembers a guy named Ivan, and her face lights up immediately. She remembers him as the kindest, coolest guy as they start the walk back to safety. Even if people say he died years ago, Mord knows it's easy to hide behind a thick beard. Back in his own room, Ivan takes a moment to himself. It was a long, exhausting day, and honestly, the payoff barely felt worth the effort. He checks his logs. The safety of his target, Esides Krasilov, has been officially secured. Mission complete. Another key player is exactly where she needs to be. He returns to the orphanage he's been running, which serves as his current base of operations. He reviews the reports, confirming that everyone is moving exactly as he planned. He's even tracking the hero's daughter, Isabel, as she prepares to leave for the capital. And Oscar, the son of a famous knight, is right on her heels. Since their kingdom isn't far, Ivan isn't too worried about their safety for now. Some, like the mage Baelgrin's daughter, are already skipping the long road by taking an airship. Even Lucia is already situated in the capital, well ahead of schedule. Ivan figures if he can handle just a few more tutorial events, he might finally get to retire. He lights up a cigar, finally getting a chance to think about something other than the mission. He starts a list of foods he misses from Earth, starting with a proper bowl of kimchi stew. But he quickly changes his mind. What he's really craving right now is tteokbokki. Not the fancy franchise stuff either, just the spicy kind from a school front snack bar. He sighs, wishing for home, while Priscilla watches him through the window like a stalker. He realizes he's not alone and nearly jumps out of his skin. Priscilla is just chilling on the windowsill, laughing at him for mumbling to himself. Ivan is just confused how she even managed to climb up to his room. She claims she's just being a good student, despite the fact that they're currently on the 3rd floor. He really has to wonder if wall climbing became an official part of the school curriculum. This is all part of a very specific tradition at the St. Vasilisha orphanage. He tells her to use the hallway like a normal person as they head out together. It turns out the kids have their own special way of passing the time. Approaching without letting the director notice is a fan favorite, and the kids take it very seriously. A boy from the group suddenly jumped out from the alley and threw a stone at Ivan. But with the senses of a battle-hardened veteran, such kids' pranks couldn't get past him. He was a man who could catch objects thrown from behind without even turning around. He was a mysterious man who could find hidden kids in a single attempt during their games. Above all, he had a presence that was both intimidating and protective. Despite his rough appearance, his personality was surprisingly harmless and gentle with the children. That made him one of the best playmates for the kids at the orphanage. Whenever they saw him coming, the kids would shout in excitement, eager for his attention. He knew that even if he ended up leaving, they should be able to manage on their own. There were only 2 weeks left until the next hero party's child was scheduled to board the train. He thought he finally had some freedom, but reality had other plans. Priscilla is tied to a chair, shouting that her director will make them pay if they don't let her go. The kidnappers are baffled, asking her what organization she belongs to and why she keeps rambling about a director. One of them demands to know who this director even is. She yells out the name Ivan Petrovich, wondering if they've really never heard of him. The name makes them stop in their tracks for a second. Then they just burst out laughing at the commonality of the name. Ivan is the most common name in Krasilov, and Petrovich is the most common last name. One of them tells her to wait a second as a dark presence enters the room. A mysterious woman looms over the scene, asking who they were just talking about. Priscilla is terrified, tears welling in her eyes as she whispers Ivan's name. The woman's aura flares with a crimson light, her hand glowing with a strange energy. Back at the orphanage, Ivan is holding a torn piece of clothing, his face set in a grim expression. One of the residents tells him that Priscilla has been kidnapped, and Ivan confirms he remembers her. He notices a faint, cross-shaped scar left on the fabric. He realizes it's the trademark mark of an organization run by a nasty-tempered bastard he knows. Ivan knows this is a direct summons from his longtime grandmaster. The Extermination Squad was her creation, and he knows exactly where to find her. He recalls her saying she was retiring, but it was clearly just a cover. She had set up an assassination squad behind the scenes, led by the woman known as Enrique. Ivan arrives at the southern Fritzenkaya aqueduct, knowing her dungeon is hidden inside. Even though it was his only lead, it only took him 3 hours to track the place down. In the heart of the central garden, there's a group of monuments dedicated to those lost in the war. But shortly after the Demon King fell, one of the statues suddenly vanished. Ripping a massive statue out of the capital was pure madness, but she managed to get away with it. A simple wooden sign is left in its place, with a message from Enrique claiming the right to mourn them. Ivan looks up at the missing statue, reflecting on the sharp blades that were never meant for times of peace. The disbandment of the unit and the theft of the statue are connected in more ways than one. He looks closer at a remaining inscription, wondering if it had always been there. It promises that even when names are forgotten, their glory will remain immortal. The message is dedicated to all those who can no longer stand with them. It's signed by Elizaveta Kirillovna Krasilov and Enrique Sarajevica. Ivan bows his head in front of a war memorial, his expression hidden in the shadows. Mourn not those who departed first, the inscription reads, a somber tribute to the fallen. For I too shall soon stand in their ranks, he murmurs, his voice filled with a grim acceptance. A hidden mechanism clicks into place, splitting the stone floor to reveal a secret passage. The statue of a lone soldier marks the entrance to a world hidden beneath the city streets. Ivan steps into the darkness, his footsteps echoing through the cold, stone corridors. He arrives in a sumptuously furnished room where a familiar figure awaits him. A woman sits at the far end of a long table, holding a steaming cup of tea with practiced elegance. "So you still remember it," she remarks, her sharp eyes watching his every move. 7 years have passed since they last met, yet the air between them is thick with old ghosts. This is Enrique Sarajevica, a former rogue of the hero's party and a being of legendary power. A century ago, she famously betrayed the elder vampire who turned her, draining his life for her own. Known as a hero who quelled riots and a monster who lived by the blade, she is a woman of many faces. She was also Ivan's grandmaster, the architect behind the elite and lethal annihilation unit. To most, she is Enrique the traitor, an assassin whose name alone commands fear and respect. She notes that Ivan hasn't touched his coffee, her lips curling into a teasing smirk. Ivan remains stoic, replying that his preferences have changed and he now prefers his coffee cold. He refuses to play her games, demanding to know where she is holding Priscilla hostage. Enrique tells him to lose the hostile glare, claiming it only serves to make him look inexperienced. Her smile widens, revealing sharp fangs that glint in the dim light of the chamber. Sensing the shift in the room, Ivan's hand edges closer to the weapon at his side. "Didn't I teach you?" she asks, her eyes glowing with a predatory red intensity. She assures him the girl is safe for now, though the threat in her voice is unmistakable. A massive spectral snake of red energy manifests, coiling around Ivan with suffocating intent. Enrique demands answers, her playful tone replaced by a cold, sharp authority. The spectral serpent looms over him, its jaws agape as it radiates her overwhelming bloodlust. She questions his recent activities, suspicious of why he has suddenly started gathering orphans. Her presence flares like a wildfire, her aura of power making the very air feel heavy. Ivan stares back at her, his internal thoughts noting just how unhinged his former mentor has become. He recalls her supposed retirement, a lie used to mask her work training elite agents in secret. Her suspicion is that Ivan is doing the same, creating his own academy for assassins. To her, his actions are nothing less than an open declaration of war against the status quo. However, her serious demeanor suddenly cracks into a look of sheer annoyance. "Ouch, that hurts," she says dismissively, complaining about the prickly aura he's projecting. She can't stop staring at his beard, wondering why on earth he's chosen such a dated style. To her, the facial hair is a ridiculous attempt at a disguise that only makes him stand out. She complains that his presence is practically screaming for people to stay away or die. Sweat dropping, she wonders what could possibly be going through his head to look this way. Ivan remained silent despite her wandering thoughts. His mind was focused on the delicate political game they were all playing. After the Demon King's defeat, Krasilov appeared peaceful, but it was rotting from a power struggle. Princess Elizaveta stood against her brother, the Crown Prince, to prevent a new war from breaking out. To maintain the peace, she redeployed Ivan, an agent believed dead, to protect the Academy's key students. Ivan realizes he is the agent the rumors spoke of, yet he's puzzled why Enrique would ask about his plots when she should already know his mission. He knows Enrique is aware of the task Princess Elizaveta entrusted to him. Suspicion grows as he wonders why she's pressing for detail she should already possess. A chilling thought crosses his mind. Has Enrique betrayed the princess and aligned herself with the crown prince? Both former allies are struck by a sudden wave of mutual bewilderment, each questioning the other's sanity. After considering the various theories, Ivan finally spoke up, shifting the conversation to the rumors of Enrique training an apprentice destined for Yansk University. Ivan tries to keep the situation under control, hoping for a peaceful resolution. Enrique's grin turns sharp and predatory as she waits for his next words. Ivan explains that his client has a protective interest in Enrique's own disciple, stressing her importance to the nation. He conveys the princess's request for him to take over the guidance of Enrique's student. He reminds her of Princess Elizabetta's precarious situation and the weight of the task given to him. He believes that if Enrique is still a loyal ally, she will understand the necessity of his request. From Enrique's perspective, however, Ivan's words sound like a direct threat against her beloved student. To her, his claim of taking charge of the disciple is nothing more than a declaration that she is now a target. While Ivan feels relieved that he's communicated clearly, Enrique is boiling with protective rage. Unable to contain her anger, she shouts for her disciple to enter the room immediately. A cheerful voice responds from the hallway as the door swings open. Enrique introduces her disciple, Lucia, who greets Ivan with enthusiastic respect, calling him her senior brother. Ivan is taken aback, realizing that the disciple of a vampire is a seemingly normal human girl. Lucia confirms his surprise with a bright smile, proudly declaring that her master is, in her eyes, a human. She acknowledges her master's unique diet, but insists on the kindness and care she receives. To Lucia, humanity is defined by one's heart and actions rather than their race, a belief she shares with conviction. Ivan is momentarily speechless, processing the young girl's unconventional perspective. He reflects on how hostile the kingdom has become toward non-humans since the war, finding Lucia's open-mindedness remarkable. Enrique starts talking about her pride and joy, a girl she thinks is way better than any of them. But things take a dark turn as she admits she really doesn't want to have to kill him. Ivan doesn't flinch, drawing his tactical axe as the room starts to fill with mana. He wants to know where her loyalty really lies, since she's still hanging around the royals. Ivan flares his mana, demanding to know what Alexander paid her to get her on his side. On the other side, Enrique also unleashed a wave of mana, her pressure just as overwhelming. But she just looks at him in total confusion, asking if he wasn't the one allied with Alexander. Ivan freezes, realizing there's been a massive misunderstanding about who's actually working for whom. The two of them just stand there in the quiet room while the tension slowly fizzles out. Turns out this duel was actually just a very heated meeting around a tea table. Ivan finally takes a seat, exhausted by how every talk with her turns into a death match. Lucia just laughs it off, thinking the two of them actually make a pretty good pair. Ivan sips his tea, wondering if he can charge the princess extra for this level of stress. Regardless, he's glad the immediate problem is solved, and he can finally relax. He figures Lucia will be safe enough during the tutorial, with someone like Enrique watching over her. Lucia, on the other hand, is busy fangirling over her master's incredible bloodlust. The conference wraps up, and for a second they look more like a weird family than anything else. Enrique is still curious why a guy like him spent so much time teaching orphans how to be stealthy. Ivan explains he never actually taught them that. They just figured it out while looking for work. She realizes the kids probably just picked up his habits just by watching him every day. Later that evening, Ivan takes a long walk through the city with Priscilla. He's still curious why she followed him all this way just to get caught by Enrique's people. She stops and looks up at him, clearly struggling with something. With tears in her eyes, she asks if he's really getting ready to leave them. After 2 years of peace at the orphanage, government agents have been dropping by more and more lately. He's even started making a list of all the Korean food he wants to eat when he finally leaves. He thought he was being subtle, but it turns out the kids saw right through him. He looks away and admits that, yeah, he'll probably be moving on soon. Priscilla's heart just breaks right there. She breaks down into sobs, begging him not to leave them all alone. Ivan realizes that for a war orphan like her, his leaving feels like losing her home all over again. She'd even gone into the city to find work so she wouldn't be a burden, which is how she got into trouble. Ivan lets out a sigh and gently wraps his coat around her shoulders. He tells her that while he does want to leave this world behind, he's not doing it yet. He looks out over the city as the sun sets, knowing his ties here are stronger than he thought. He promises her he's only going to the university nearby, and that he'll come back to visit often. That's enough to finally bring a small, relieved smile to her face. He knows he's poured way too much of himself into this place to ever truly walk away. Back at the orphanage, life seems to settle back into a quiet routine. But the kids aren't just playing anymore. They're hitting the books like their lives depend on it. Priscilla's got a new look of determination on her face as she smiles. If the only way to see their director again is to get into that university, then they're going to pass those exams no matter what. Priscilla slams the table, declaring that they have to make it into the university, and they have to do it without getting caught by the director. The classroom at Basilisha Orphanage is practically burning with the kids' passion, turning their exam prep into a full-blown competition. Ivan looks over his documents, satisfied to see that every single one of those kids has entered candidate mode to follow him to St. Yansk. He officially marks Cities as a completed mission, knowing the Berserker's daughter is exactly where she needs to be. Lucia is checked off the list too. As the star pupil of a legendary vampire rogue, she's already moving according to his plan. He narrows his eyes, satisfied that his years of careful preparation are finally starting to bear fruit. Somewhere else, a train barrels across the tracks, carrying the final piece of his script toward the next stage. A heavy broadsword rests against the seat, a symbol of a legendary burden its owner is still learning to carry. Isabelle, the daughter of the great hero Maximilian, stares out at the passing landscape with a look of quiet resolve. To Ivan, she is the ultimate mission, the hero's daughter who's finally stepping into the story he's prepared for her. A dark scout watches from the canopy, hidden in the pitch-black night. The hero party was fundamentally an assassination squad, despite their current situation. Their mission was to infiltrate deep into enemy lines and take the head of the Demon King's army. To do that, they had to be absolute masters of stealth. But Maximilian didn't really do stealthy. He'd parry flying daggers with a smirk, while his teammates called him completely insane. Enrique, the party's demon rogue, would constantly yell at him to stop screaming their location to the entire world. He never listened. The guy would charge into battle glowing like a beacon, shouting about how he couldn't lose. His power would fill the sky, practically begging every monster for miles to come and find them. After a fight, he'd just rub his head and call it a warm-up, even with a broken wrist. He'd casually ask for a heal, while Enrique stood there fuming at his recklessness. Then there was Einar, the team's massive barbarian. He lived to leave a mark on the world, which usually meant setting himself on fire and charging in. One night, the group stood before a massive mountain range, and Maximilian decided to literally split the sky open. That move kicked a hornet's nest, and every demon in the region came pouring out at once. Their stealthy mission turned into a desperate retreat from an army of dragons and giants. A younger Kim Seonwoo clearly remembers that insane escape, running for his life with a pistol in hand. High above, a single bright star shone through the wreckage of the night. Maximilian just pointed up at the crack he'd made in the heavens. He lay there laughing, boasting about how he'd finally cleaved the sky itself. Einar wasn't impressed, arguing that cutting through a solid mountain was a much more impressive feat. The two of them just sat there debating which type of destruction was cooler. To them, the logic of normal people just didn't apply. The hero party was basically a den of lunatics, and Maximilian was the king of them all. He was the one who shone the brightest, always chasing some impossible goal. Even covered in the grime of battle, he never stopped laughing. Seonwoo just watched from the sidelines, wondering how they weren't dead yet. That's why he never liked that kind of hero. They were far too chaotic. 4 years ago, Maximilian finally killed the Demon King, and then vanished without a word. The world still remembers the hero, but they're starting to forget the actual man. Back in the present, Ivan Petrovich finds himself being grilled by government agents on a train. Dmitri and his team are all over him, and it's getting pretty crowded in the cabin. Ivan sighs. Things are officially starting to get annoying. This all goes back to the day he stopped that terrorist attack on Cities. Dmitri was shocked that Ivan predicted the exact time and location of the incident. He was so impressed, he offered Ivan support from the counterintelligence command, practically begging to work together. But then the curiosity turned into suspicion. He wanted to know how a retired veteran built an intelligence network that even the government couldn't track. He leaned in with a look that was more calculation than friendship. To Dmitri, it looked like Ivan was backed by some massive, secret organization. Ivan knew that without a clear explanation, things were going to get very complicated. But he isn't saying a word. After all, true authority is built on mystery. But that result wasn't exactly what Ivan had in mind. He found himself stuck with 5 clumsy agents who were clearly sent to be his watchdogs. He couldn't believe how sloppy they were. Why were secret agents wearing matching outfits in public? The whole group was huddled together, looking incredibly suspicious in a half-empty cabin. Looking at the sweating rookies, Ivan wondered if he'd ever actually get to retire in peace. He decided it was time to give these kids a taste of how the Extermination Squad used to do things. The train pushed forward, leaving a trail of black smoke across the bright blue sky. The wheels ground against the iron tracks as they picked up speed. By the time they reached the next station, the agents were practically begging to leave. Ivan stood over them with an aura so intense it felt like he was set on fire. He reminded them that a real operative never shows their true hand. Dmitri had promised his men that this guy was quiet, but he couldn't have been more wrong. The agents were left in tears after an 18-hour lecture that felt like a psychological weapon. Watching them scramble away into the distance, Ivan finally felt a bit of peace. He knew Dmitri wanted tabs on him, but he'd just given those spies a justification to quit. His real focus was elsewhere, protecting Oscar, the son of the legendary knight Gilles Ver. It was a perfect win-win, protecting the hero party's legacy while ditching his own surveillance. He noticed a familiar noblewoman walking past him down the aisle. Elizaveta Kirillovna Krasilov carried herself with the pride of high nobility. She sat by the window, sighing as the scenery blurred into a dull streak. A nervous attendant tried to offer some comfort, but she wasn't having it. He reached out a hand, trying to settle her nerves. Her eyes flashed with a cold, terrifying light that silenced him instantly. She called him a useless idiot and told him to get out of her sight. Staring out at the world again, she muttered a frustrated insult under her breath. The man quietly slipped out of the cabin, leaving the lady to her thoughts. But once the door was closed, his submissive act vanished, replaced by a dark intensity. The express train from St. Madeleine continued its long haul toward the capital. Passengers were quiet as they crossed through several high-risk military zones. Ivan watched the borderlands go by, his mind already calculating the risks. He'd identified only 3 specific stations where a terrorist attack was even possible. The sun set on the first section, and remarkably, nothing out of the ordinary happened. The train sped through the second section, a prime spot for an ambush, but the night remained silent. As they entered the final section, Ivan's hand tightened around the weapon in his coat. He sat in the darkness, his single eye glowing with tactical focus. The rest of the car was peaceful, the other travelers completely unaware of any danger. The absolute silence started to gnaw at him. He wondered if his entire prediction was wrong, and if there was no tutorial event at all. If his fight with the demon earlier was just a coincidence, then his knowledge of this world was useless. The fear that he was in a world without a set genre sent him into a spiral of frustration. Ivan cursed under his breath, wondering if this godforsaken world would ever actually end. Chaos broke out at the final stop as people saw Ivan with his gun, shouting that the terrorist attack was finally here. What if the story didn't end with the hero going into seclusion? What if Maximilian simply finished his quest and went back to his own world? Ivan's eyes burned with an icy glow. If the hero left, then what happened to the world he abandoned? Before he was Ivan Petrovich, he was Kim Sionwoo, a man who never asked for this burden. The steam engine roared into the night, carrying the weight of a fate he was still trying to outrun. He looked at his own hands, trembling with a mix of rage and exhaustion. He didn't want to be a soldier, he just wanted to go home. He wanted to leave it all behind. Staring into the cabin window, Ivan saw the reflection of the life he craved: modern comforts, movies, and a week of undisturbed sleep. He missed the sound of his own language, and the simplicity of a world where death wasn't just another part of the workday. But in this pre-modern nightmare, concepts like leisure were a luxury he couldn't afford. He tightened his grip on the intruder's throat, his resolve hardening into ice. A sudden violet light flashed in the darkness, signaling an unexpected shift. With a violent crash, the glass shattered as the train car buckled under the force of an explosion. Ivan stood amidst the chaos, his trench coat billowing as the cabin was engulfed in a searing light. The screeching of metal and the roar of fire drowned out all other sounds. A massive explosion tore through the center of the train, lighting up the night sky like a dying star. The heavy locomotive began to tip, losing its grip on the iron rails. The train car plummeted toward the ravine, a twisted cage of iron and flame. Isabel screamed as the world turned upside down, and the panicked man she knew as Kim Seonwoo vanished in the chaos. In his place, Ivan Petrovich took over, his mind cooling to a sub-zero focus as he jumped into the wreckage. Everything felt like the long, bitter winters of Krasilov, cold, sharp, and unforgiving. He moved through the destruction with a chilling, meticulous grace. His prediction had been right all along. The tutorial wasn't over, and the real fight was just beginning. He leaped into the air, silhouetted against the massive, uncaring moon as the train burned below. Not yet, the ending wasn't here yet. He remembered the legacy Maximilian had left behind, a burden that fell onto his shoulders. High above the crash site, the mountain air was thick with the lingering scent of destruction and the eerie silence of the night. The wreckage of the train sat motionless in the gorge, a mangled pile of iron and wood that served as a grim monument to the ambush. Beneath the twisted beams and shattered glass, the memories of the initial chaos began to flood back. Isabel let out a ragged breath as she clawed her way back to consciousness, her body aching from the violent impact. Her eyes fluttered open, searching the darkness for some sense of reality as she struggled to comprehend the scale of the disaster. "What happened?" she whispered. A bloodied face appeared above her, his breathing heavy and ragged. It was August, a survivor who had been pushed to his limit, reaching out to see if she was alive. She stared at him in disbelief, her mind racing to connect this battered man with the person she had known before the train derailed. August was unrecognizable, his face streaked with gore and his eyes wide with a frantic, desperate energy. "Why you?" Isabel gasped. Isabel looked at him, remembering how he had always seemed so distant and composed before everything fell apart. "Why would you?" he snarled, his voice a guttural rasp that betrayed the sheer agony he was enduring. Through his pain, August urged her to flee, revealing that the terrorists had orchestrated the derailment specifically to target her. He begged her to leave his broken body behind and run. Isabel's voice was a whisper of confusion. She couldn't understand why he would throw his life away for someone who had never shown him anything but contempt. She lashed out with words, claiming he was only trying to avoid the wrath of her father, Maximilian, a man who, in her eyes, cared for no one but himself. August met her gaze, his eyes reflecting a profound, weary understanding that silenced her accusations. "I know," he replied softly. He didn't save her for the hero's favor. He saved her because she was the hero's daughter, and because of a deeper resolve he had yet to voice. Beneath the debris, Ivan saw Diane August, his body broken as he shielded Isabel, the hope the hero had entrusted to the world. Isabel looked up in terror as Ivan approached, his presence more imposing than the destruction surrounding them. He looked at the injured knight with a grim, bearded expression. Diane August groaned in agony, his armor shattered and his body covered in blood. Ivan loomed over them, his voice low. "Knight, what is your name?" Isabel stammered out the name of her companion, her eyes wide with shock. Ivan ignored the girls, trembling, and looked directly at the dying man. "Do you want to live?" Without waiting for an answer, he popped the cork on a flask of thick, glowing green liquid. He didn't offer comfort, only a cold warning. "This is going to hurt." The agony Diane August endured was legendary, a testament to a will of iron. At least, that was the story Isabel chose to tell herself later. In reality, Diane wailed in terror, offering to sell out his entire night order just to make the pain stop. Isabel watched in horror as her companion's dignity evaporated into screams of, "Just kill me instead." Her patience finally snapped, and she looked ready to kill the imbecile herself. After a sharp blow from Isabel, Diane August sat in a daze, drooling and staring at nothing. The trauma had caused him to regress to a childlike state, much to Ivan's cold amusement and Isabel's frustration. Ivan turned his attention to the mountainside. "The ambushers are coming. Carry the knight. I will handle the fighting." Isabel drew her blade with a determined glare. "I can fight too." Isabel's grip tightened on her sword, her knuckles white as she glared at Ivan. Ivan's evaluation was as cold as the winter air, dismissing her training with a casual remark. Isabel bristled, her voice sharp with a mix of anger and bewilderment at his arrogance. As Ivan strolled away, Isabel watched him with narrowed eyes, her suspicion growing. When she asked if he knew her father, the only reply she received was a vague, dismissive shrug. Ivan takes command, telling the survivors to gather everyone and start a fire. He even has them ripping out train seats to use as makeshift blankets against the freezing night. Isabel's worried, asking if he's really heading out into the dark by himself. Ivan just shuts her down, saying it's not her problem. He's already turning away, completely focused on the task at hand. The guy looks like he's seen 100 nights just like this one. Out here, tactical doctrine is the only thing that keeps you alive. It's all about assuming the second worst and acting for the best. Usually that sounds like a line from a manual, but in real combat the meaning becomes crystal clear. You have to expect the enemy to hit you in whatever way is hardest to counter. When a train goes down like this, the enemy expects the survivors to run. They're already starting the pursuit. For the target, getting caught while running is the absolute worst-case scenario. So Ivan's counter is simple: put the target right where the enemy can see them. This forces the enemy to stop chasing and start encircling, gathering them all into one spot. While they swarm toward the light of the fire, Ivan moves into position to act for the best. He understands the phrase perfectly. If they're going to be his worst possible opponent, he's going to be the exact same threat to them. He summarizes it simply: take the attack you'd hate the most and give it right back. He checks his handgun, his focus absolute. This is the pistol sniping technique. It's a trick from the Annihilation Squad that lets you use a simple handgun for long-range kills. A single shot rings out through the trees. One of the soldiers goes down before the rest even realize they're being watched. They start screaming for whoever's out there to show themselves. Another flash of gunfire lights up the dark. In this kind of pitch-black forest, carrying a torch is basically like painting a giant target on your own chest. But Ivan isn't just shooting. He closes the gap and buries a hand axe into another soldier's back. The guy's buddy is terrified, unable to believe someone is actually using an axe in a gunfight. Blood sprays as the blade hits home. Before the other soldier can even aim his pistol, Ivan is already on him. He puts the axe away with a clean, practiced motion. Just like that, the entire unit is wiped out. He calmly reloads his pistol, preparing for the next group. He doesn't need a team. A single man from the Annihilation Squad can encircle an entire group by himself. Over at the main group, the report comes in to the commander. Another unit wiped out, hacked to pieces by an axe. Apelos is starting to wonder if they're actually facing an elite strike force instead of just some survivors. He hears gunshots coming from the west, then the north. It sounds like the shooters are slowly closing the circle around them. Apelos grabs a handgun from one of his men. He fires a shot straight into the air. He realizes something that the rest of his men haven't. The enemy is just one man. His soldier is confused. There were clearly multiple gunshots coming from different directions. But Ivan isn't everywhere at once. He's just smart, rigging up wires through the trees. A soldier's boot catches on one of the tripwires. The wire pulls the trigger on a gun tied to a tree, firing a shot. Apelos is fuming. He realizes all those gunshots were actually just their own weapons being used in a trap. The soldier realization how screwed they are hits him all at once. Before he can even react, Ivan is right there, ready to finish the job. Apelos realizes he's been completely played. That first shot wasn't meant to kill. It was just a test to see if he had the line-of-fire detection skill. One of his soldiers is panicking, unable to believe a single person could pull off an ambush like this. He wonders if it really is the work of the hero's daughter. Looking at the carnage, the commander remembers the raw, absurd power of the hero himself. Even if the daughter only has half that strength, she'd still be a monster. He's not taking any chances. He orders his remaining forces to gather up and hunt down the person hiding in the forest. Deep in the trees, a survivor is shocked that his leader is planning to handle the rest of the hunt alone. A gunshot echoes through the quiet night air. Back at the campfire, the survivors are reaching their breaking point. They're convinced they're all going to die out here in the snow. Isabel tries to snap Sir August out of his trance, but the man is completely gone, babbling about glowing fireflies like a child. Suddenly, Isabel's eyes go wide as she senses a powerful presence approaching. Epilos steps into the light of the fire. The survivors scatter in terror as the demon commander finally shows his face. He introduces himself with cold formality as a centurion of the 6th Dragon Commander's Guard. His eyes glow with a menacing red light as he declares that he'll be the one to deal with the hero's daughter personally. Meanwhile, Ivan is still out in the woods, the full moon hanging high above the carnage he's left behind. He's covered in blood but stays tactical. Aside from the commander, there are still 50 soldiers deployed in the area. He grips his blood-stained axe, his mind racing through the grim logistics of the battle. Standing over a heap of bodies, he realizes he's figured out the pattern of this world. But despite his success, he's starting to get a bad feeling about how the story is unfolding. If this world follows the logic of the web novels he used to critique, then this should be the Academy arc. That means this whole train crash, and the following pursuit is supposed to be the tutorial. The problem is, this tutorial is way too hard for any beginner to actually survive. He thinks back to the tutorial of another character, Esides, which was so easy he could have cleared it with one hand. But for Isabel, the situation is completely different. The game is rigged from the start. He analyzes her situation like a broken game level. In his mind, he sees her as a pixelated character, struggling to even escape the first carriage of the train. And now, before she's even had a chance to learn the basic combat system, she's being swarmed by elite soldiers. To top it off, she's facing a boss that's way out of her league. In Ivan's eyes, it's a guaranteed game over for her. Some games have scripted losses you're supposed to just accept, but these enemies aren't following a script. They're trying to kill her for real. He realizes that the only way she survives this mess is if a helper NPC steps in. And then it hits him. In this story, he is that helper NPC. He starts sprinting back toward the camp, moving with a speed that blurs his surroundings. He wonders if being an NPC means he'll never get a real ending or a way back to his own world. But he's got more immediate problems to solve, like why the difficulty is so high and if Isabel can hold out. He's got to see the truth of this world with his own eyes. He reaches the edge of the clearing, just in time to witness the confrontation. Epilos looms over Isabel, telling her he came fully prepared for a fight worthy of her father's name. But as he looks at her, the demon can't help but smirk at her clear lack of experience. Isabel is trembling, her grip on her sword desperate as she faces down the commander's taunts. Ivan watches from the shadows, his eyes glowing. He knows that as an NPC, he shouldn't interfere with the protagonist's growth unless absolutely necessary. The two of them clash, steel ringing out as Epilos easily parries her strikes. The commander mocks her form, saying she's just someone who's memorized a manual without ever tasting a real battle. Isabel yells for him to shut up, pouring everything she has into a desperate flurry of attacks. The survivors watch in terror as Isabel struggles against the overwhelming power of the demon commander. Epilos parries her every move with ease, mocking her for having reached this age without ever facing a true life-or-death battle. He looks down on her with cold, glowing eyes, calling her efforts pathetic. To him, she's just a child playing at being a warrior. Overwhelmed by rage and frustration, Isabel lets out a desperate scream, pouring all her strength into one last charge. But Epilos is too fast. With a single, powerful blow, he shatters her momentum and leaves her wide open. Her sword is sent spinning into the cold night sky, leaving her completely defenseless against the commander. Isabel collapses into the snow, her spirit broken. Apilos sighs, lamenting the good soldiers he lost for such a disappointing result. He looms over her like a shadow, his blade pointed at her throat. He offers her the chance for last words, addressing her only as the hero's daughter. As she faces her end, that title, hero, echoes in her mind like a heavy, impossible burden. Just then, she heard a strange piece of advice echoing in her mind, a warning not to try and become a hero. From a distance, near the campfire, she recalled the true meaning of a hero being explained, not as the strongest, but as the one who remains bravest despite their fears. She turned back to that memory, and the one speaking those words was none other than Sir August. As Sir August gradually regained consciousness from his delirium, the man kept repeating his oath. These were the sacred vows of the knights, a code of honor spoken before they marched off to a war that would change everything. A younger Sir August had looked her in the eye and told her that the first step to true strength was recognizing one's own weakness. He remembers the solemn ceremony in the great cathedral of Thales, where the king himself presided over the knight's initiation. Even after losing his mind, those words remain the most precious thing August holds on to. The knight's oath of Thales was simple, to stand with the weak and to never lose the perspective of those they were sworn to protect. Isabel finally understands. She accepts her own weakness, and in that acceptance she finds a new kind of resolve. Apilos grows tired of the silence and swings his sword down to deliver the killing blow. But Isabel isn't there. She rolls across the snow, her movements suddenly sharp and purposeful as she recalls the reason she carries a sword. She lunges for her fallen blade, her heart steady. She realizes she doesn't fight for glory or a title, but because it is the just thing to do. The survivors gasp in disbelief as the girl they thought was defeated stands her ground once more. To her, this battle is no different from any other act of kindness. It's simply the right thing to do, because it is just. Apilos is momentarily stunned by the sudden change in her aura. He sees the spirit of a true knight of Thales. Their blades clash again, but this time, it's Isabel who holds the center, her strike ringing out with a powerful shockwave. She tells him that she stands there not because she is fearless, but because she is humble enough to know why she must fight. Every move she makes now is natural and fluid, driven by a simple, undeniable purpose. Doing good is always a simple and natural thing. Her eyes ignite with a brilliant blue light as she challenges the demon to face her true strength. Therefore, for the sake of justice, draw your sword. She becomes a blur of silver, her sword moving so fast that Apilos can barely see the strikes, let alone parry them. The clearing is filled with the sound of clashing steel and the light of her burgeoning power. Apilos is forced back, his face contorted in shock and disbelief as he finds himself overwhelmed. HOW. Isabel sees the opening she needs and drives her blade forward with everything she has left. The sword pierces his defenses, the sound of tearing flesh echoing through the trees. Under the light of the full moon, she thrusts her blade deep into the commander's chest. Apilos stumbles back, blood pooling beneath him as a ragged, dark laugh escapes his throat. He admits defeat, amused by the irony of being bested by both the hero and his daughter. The demon commander falls to his knees, his strength finally failing him as blood flows from his wounds. Isabel looks down at him, her voice cold and steady. She rejects the shadow of her father's legacy. I'm not the hero's daughter. She declares her own identity, not as a nameless daughter of the hero, but as Isabel, the daughter of Maximilian and Marie. Apilos lets out a final, faint breath of realization before collapsing into the dirt. I see. With the threat finally ended, Isabel sinks to the ground, her body trembling from the sheer exhaustion of the fight. Isabel rests her forehead against her sword, her body slumped with fatigue. She has given everything she had to this fight, and the weight of her victory finally settles in. Nearby, the survivors of the attack huddle together by a fire, tears of relief and exhaustion on their faces. Every single person who made it through the night is alive, a testament to the effort she and her companions put forth. Isabel's eyes widen in surprise as a familiar, gruff voice calls out to her from the shadows, offering a rare and unexpected word of praise. Ivan steps into the light of the clearing, his expression as unreadable as ever. Isabel looks at the broken body of the demon commander and asks if any other enemies remain in the woods. Ivan stands over the remains of a Pelos, his boots stained with the grime of the battlefield. He confirms with cold certainty that the demon commander was the very last of them. A weary, genuine laugh escapes Isabel as she looks up at him, finding his casual strength truly amazing. Ivan merely brushes the comment aside, uninterested in his own legends. As he looks at the exhausted girl, Ivan's thoughts turn to the cruel mechanics of the world he's found himself in. He realizes that this terror attack was intended to be a classic awakening event, for Isabel, a brutal part of the tutorial. He envisions the alternate, tragic path this night could have taken, a world where every survivor, including the veteran Sir August, was ruthlessly wiped out in the snow. In that dark timeline, Isabel would have been the sole survivor, her latent power awakening through the trauma of loss as she slaughtered every enemy in the forest in a cold, hollow vengeance. But because he chose to step in, the ordinary NPCs who were destined to die are still breathing. He has successfully disrupted the narrative and changed the course of their lives. Standing over the fallen demon, Ivan feels a sense of quiet, defiant satisfaction. He is no longer a bystander or a scripted character. He is the one holding the pen, and he is no NPC. A memory from long ago flashed through his mind. The day Maximilian, the hero, unleashed a power so great it seemed to tear the very sky asunder and split the darkness in two. He remembers the faces of the hero's party as they looked upward into the rift, their eyes searching for something more than just a victory over the demons. Beyond the thick, oppressive clouds of the Demon King's territory, a single point of light had remained, a distant morning star that promised the return of the sun. Ivan stares up at the moon, reflecting on the hero's simple, secret desire, to know that the morning star was still shining exactly where it was meant to be. He admits to himself that he never truly liked the man behind the legend, but he can't deny the legacy the hero left behind, a legacy that still walks the earth today. He sees the ghost of a smile on a younger Maximilian's face, a memory from a time when the weight of the world was shared between friends. Looking down at Isabel's defiant, soot-stained face, Ivan realizes that the morning star still shines in the next generation, and all he can do is watch over it with a grudging respect. With his thoughts finally clear, Ivan focuses on the path ahead. He must remind himself of his original goal and the reason he came back to this world. Isabel looks up at him with confusion as he falls into a contemplative silence. His mission is absolute. He must ensure that the children of the hero's party all graduate safely from the trials to come. He knows that the world is becoming more dangerous, and there is still a great deal he needs to learn if he is to protect those left in his charge. Reaching into the folds of his coat, he ponders the disturbing questions raised by the night's events. The fact that demons can roam so freely near the capital is a sign of a deep, systemic rot. He pulls out a flask of mysterious, glowing green liquid, a clue taken from the enemy. He wonders who is directing these calculated attacks from the safety of the shadows. As he examines the strange potion, a chilling thought occurs to him. How many more of these creatures have already infiltrated the walls of the academy? Isabel stares up, shivering and covered in grime, asking him what he's even doing. Ivan looms over her, his eye glowing through the dark as he pops the cork on a suspicious green potion he calls treatment. Green energy flashes from the recovery potion as the demon roars against his captor. Ivan keeps him pinned while a Pelos screams about his rank, trying to sound more important than he is. He keeps shouting about his division, even as his body starts to fail. Desperate to avoid capture, the demon suddenly bites down on his own tongue. Blood splatters across his face as he tries to end it right there. Ivan just sighs. He's seen this 1,000 times, another frontline grunt falling for the old suicide myths. He tells the guy flat out, biting your tongue isn't actually going to kill you. He explains that the body is built way tougher than that. If it were that easy, people would be dropping dead at dinner. The only way he's dying today is from a heart attack, so doing this just drags out the pain. Ivan pulls out a vial of glowing green liquid and starts pouring the recovery potion straight down the guy's throat. He tells him it's just first aid, while Apelos can only make muffled noises in protest. The demon's eyes go wide as he realizes who he's dealing with. The poisoned spider Petrovich. He heard Ivan was dead, but the squad's brutal efficiency is unmistakable. Ivan stares him down, wondering if this guy actually saw any real action during the war. He asks why an officer of his caliber is being used as a disposable pawn. Apelos spits out blood, claiming they couldn't afford another failure. Ivan realizes why someone this strong was sent. He's just another piece of the tutorial script. It finally makes sense why the demon side is so desperate. Since Ivan shut down their previous op, they dispatched an officer to make sure they didn't fail again. But a centurion is the lowest rank they could have sent. It's a joke. Ivan concludes that this whole thing wasn't an army move. It was just a small group of radicals. The public report will just say it was a handful of extremists who carried out the attack. He tells the demon the truth. His own people are going to throw him away and tell everyone he acted alone. Apelos realizes he was a one-way weapon from the very beginning. Ivan stands over him, looking like the cold-blooded veteran he is. He's the Extermination Squad. He gives the guy 3 options. 1, stay locked up and get dragged to the capital. There, he'll die under brutal torture by counterintelligence. Option 2, get released and try to head back home. But his own people will hunt him down as a traitor who sold them out. Then there's option 3. Ivan brings his blade close. Apelos closes his eyes, accepting his fate. He starts reciting a dark prayer about walking through the shadow of death. He calls himself a northern star and a lighthouse in the storm. He screams for Ivan to stop talking and just kill him. Ivan is unimpressed. A prayer to the Demon King isn't going to save him here. He leans in and asks a simple question. Are your parents still alive? Apelos is confused, but Ivan clarifies. He runs an orphanage. The veteran looks away, remembering his own past. 4 years ago, his squad was ordered to kill the 7 dragon commanders. They were all wiped out, except for him. When he finally made it back alive, he handed in his discharge papers. He was done. Elizaveta told him to live out his days quietly and stay off the radar. He was to act as if he were dead. She apologized for not being able to stop the suicide mission, just thankful he survived. Ivan offers the demon a way out. He can cast aside who he was and live in the shadows, forgotten like a dead man. Apelos is hesitant, feeling like he doesn't deserve a second chance after everything he's done. Ivan tells him he'll break off his horn, a symbol that he's no longer part of the demon army. But if he prefers, Ivan can just lower the blade a little further and end it right now. This is his final choice, the chance to live as a person or leave the world like one. The demon stays silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He clenches his teeth, blood still staining his mouth as he struggles with himself. Finally, the words come out. He admits that he wants to live. Ivan calls it a smart choice. With a sharp snap, the horn is severed from the demon's head. Formal registration is complete. Apelos, age 50s, is now officially an orphan at St. Vasilisha. Ivan starts reflecting on his situation. His best guess is that this world is playing out like some academy story. Just as the theory predicted, the hero's daughter Isabel was targeted in an ambush. But because Ivan got involved, the tutorial difficulty spiked way beyond what was intended. It proves the demons aren't just scripted AI following a programmed path. They and everyone else in this world aren't just NPCs. If so, predicting every event is impossible, and obsessing over the process is a waste of time. In the end, there's only one thing he really needs to focus on: the ending, keeping these kids alive until they actually make it to graduation. No matter how much the players or the events spiral out of control, he has to hold it together. Isabel walks up to him, her voice barely a whisper as she calls him Mister. She wonders if the families on the train would still be together if she hadn't boarded. Ivan doesn't lie to her. He says they probably would be. He adds that they weren't just background characters either. He tells her that 30,000 lives were lost every single year of the war. That was the price of baiting the Demon King's forces into a battle they couldn't win. It was a desperate move to kill the enemy commanders, but it meant thousands died by the hero's hand each year. And yet, through all that blood and sacrifice, the hero Maximilian never stopped smiling. He had to be the single light of hope for everyone when there was none left. The moment he broke, it would have been the end for all the allied kingdoms. Ivan points up at the sky. That's the same star her father carried, and now it's her turn to take it up. Isabel looks up, confused, unable to pick out a specific star among so many. She stares into the vast night sky, trying to understand what he's saying. Ivan explains that being a hero isn't just about being the strongest person around. It's about being the one who never kneels under any weight, no matter how heavy. A hero never loses their smile, no matter the situation. That's who her father was. He pats Isabel on the head and tells her to lift it and stand tall as her father's daughter. He tells her to live for those who sacrifice themselves, with gratitude instead of just guilt. People pity those who are sad, but they admire the ones who can keep a smile on their face. He wants her to be like that morning star. Isabel is left speechless, a light blush on her cheeks as Ivan's words sink in. Isabel teases Ivan about his rugged look, asking if he's ever going to shave that beard. He gives her a flat no, he's keeping it. It is now late February at St. Yansk University, and the air is filled with the buzz of a new semester. Freshmen swarm the campus, their faces glowing with the raw excitement and nervous joy of finally making it here. Meanwhile, the upperclassmen watch them from a distance, their expressions a mixture of amusement and genuine pity for what's to come. It starts out like any other normal entrance ceremony, a routine day for the prestigious academy. That is, until a massive, looming shadow suddenly stretches across the entire campus, blotting out the sun. A heavy silence falls over the crowd as they realize something enormous is hovering directly above them. High in the air, a massive airborne battleship of the Kallian Kingdom drifts over the university, its official crest visible to everyone below. Osip Sornov, a tall, athletic military officer with light brown hair and a peaked cap, sprints through the hallways in a state of absolute panic. He bursts into the room, gasping that a Kallian warship has appeared right over Prichinkaya, and they are in deep trouble. In the center of the room, Elizaveta Kirillovna Krasilov stands in her elegant blue gown, her body trembling with a cold, simmering rage. She snaps at Osip that she has eyes and can clearly see the giant ship outside, her violet eyes burning with intensity. Down on the campus, Ivan weaves through the students, silently hoping that the local authorities don't do something stupid and provoke the Kallian elves. He considers it a small miracle that Isabel and Esides managed to walk away from a train derailment without a scratch. He knows exactly why the elves have brought their firepower into the skis of a foreign nation. They are making a loud, violent statement about the lack of border security and their intent to protect their own kind at any cost. While it's a bold move, Ivan knows it was always a possibility given how much the elves value their children. He suspects that Elpihara, the daughter of a legendary hero, is currently aboard that floating fortress. Isabel, the hero's daughter with radiant blonde flowing hair, catches up to Ivan and starts peppering him with questions about his role at the school. Based on his combat skills, she assumes he must be a professor for the physical education department or even a secret assassination class. Ivan watches as Isabel joins the crowd, noting that another one of the protagonists has arrived safely at the academy. When Isabel presses him again on what he actually does at the university, Ivan gives her a deadpan response. He's just the gardener. The answer leaves Isabel completely speechless, her jaw dropping in disbelief at the obvious lie. Despite her shock, she follows him into the building as the ceremony preparations continue around them. Ivan keeps a mental checklist of the key players arriving, including Lucia, the purple-haired vampire who serves as Enrique's apprentice. He also notes the arrival of Oscar, the son of Gilles Ver, confirming that all the pieces for the story are now on the board. With the main cast gathered, they have finally reached the heart of the academy. Ivan looks toward the main auditorium, knowing his own preparations for the upcoming events need to start immediately. He is well aware of the tropes that govern this world's logic, especially during the entrance ceremony. In any academy story, the ceremony is never just a boring speech. It's the prime time for something unexpected and dangerous to happen. Among the sea of students, a young man with messy black hair and amber eyes looks around, feeling a strange sensation. Suddenly, a familiar interface flickers to life in Yevgeny Novikov-Karamzin's vision, a digital glow reflecting in his eyes. A status window pops up in front of him with a congratulatory message, confirming his suspicion that his life has changed. A status window pops up. The screen identifies him as the Northern Grand Duke's Scoundrel, a title that carries both weight and trouble. Yevgeny realizes he has been possessed by a new soul, one that is about to be showered with the love of a typical protagonist's journey. In his mind's eye, he sees himself as a hero, destined to stylishly thwart a terrorist attack and save the day. It's the classic setup for an overnight rise to stardom, turning a nobody into a legend in a single afternoon. Though he was once just Eugene, in this world he is Yevgeny Novikov-Karamzin, a teen destined for greatness. The system window chimes again, congratulating him on the start of his true path. A new quest notification appears, pulsing with a bright blue light in his field of vision. The objective is clear. He has to stop a Rank D Academy raid that is currently unfolding. He is tasked with finding and removing 3 explosives hidden around the auditorium while protecting his fellow students. Yevgeny Novikov-Karamzin, A modern soul possessed into a new body stares in disbelief as a digital interface reflects in his amber eyes. A massive warning screen appears in his vision, coldly announcing that his mission has been abruptly canceled. The details of the Rank D quest, stop the Academy raid, flicker one last time, showing that the primary objective of removing 3 explosives has somehow already been completed. To his utter frustration, the system confirms that because the quest is over, any potential rewards have been wiped out. Yevgeny stands paralyzed in the middle of the ceremony, screaming internally about why his destiny is already going off the rails. On the stage, an elegant priestess in white robes welcomes the new students with a gentle blessing, while Yevgeny second-guesses his decision to join the theology department. His plan for a safe, easy path to power seems to be crumbling despite his specialized knowledge of the setting of this world. He worries about the massive monsters he might face, knowing that as a modern man, he has never even held anything sharper than a kitchen knife. In his mind, there is a vast gulf between possessing the innate talent of a swordsmanship prodigy and actually having the stomach to slaughter a living creature. For someone used to the peaceful life of a modern Korean, the thought of real combat is more than a little overwhelming. He had chosen the theology department specifically to avoid the front lines while still gaining access to powerful holy buffs. He knows his new body is gifted with incredible physical potential, but he lacks the mental fortitude to wield a blade with lethal intent. His grand strategy was to stack buffs and healing skills until he became an untouchable, overpowered force without ever having to get his hands dirty. But the sudden activation and cancellation of the status window's quest leaves him confused and desperate for answers. Deep within the shadows of the Academy's infrastructure, the real reason for the quest's failure is revealed. A complex explosive device has been intercepted. A steady hand snips through the tangle of wires, instantly completing the objective the status window had set for Yevgeny. Ivan, working in the guise of a simple gardener, calmly declares the threat neutralized as he finishes disarming the last bomb. He reflects on the common sense of his world, where an academy entrance ceremony is the most predictable time for a terrorist strike. With war machines in the sky and elite commandos on high alert, he knows that any attempt to attack the school right now is nothing short of suicidal. Yet he realizes the intruders were bold enough to pull the trigger anyway, choosing their locations with extreme care to avoid detection. They picked spots that were perfect blind spots, hidden from the eyes of civilians and the windows of the surrounding buildings. Ivan recognizes the precision of the placement. This wasn't the work of amateurs, but the calculated move of true professionals. By reverse engineering the logic of a professional saboteur, he was able to pinpoint exactly where each device was hidden. Walking through the grounds with his tools, Ivan picks up the dangerous explosives as casually as if he were harvesting baby potatoes from a garden bed. He's got the bomb disarmed. Now the only question is who actually planted it. Suspects are easy to find, but pinpointing the right group is the real challenge. The demons are out. They lack the resources to pull off something this coordinated right after their last failure. Then there are the elves with their massive warship hovering right over the university. They're an easy scapegoat, but they really don't gain anything from a random bombing. That leaves the Crown Prince's faction. They've got the means and a clear motive to hit the school, but getting past security today is a nightmare. Elizaveta's counterintelligence crews are everywhere. He mulls it over while he finishes the job. He stuffs the disarmed explosives into a sack like he's just picking up groceries. In any typical Academy story, this would be the big opening disaster. A terrorist attack at the entrance ceremony is basically a requirement for the genre. Bomb sweep's finished, so he figures it's time to head home. Yevgeny catches a glimpse of him from the shadows and thinks the guy looks like some kind of black Santa Claus. Ivan's eyes glow as he senses someone watching him. He moves with a sudden, sharp burst of speed. He hones in on the source of that strange gaze. The stone in his hand flashes and flies straight toward the spot where the noise just came from. But then no prey is brought down. What Ivan senses is just the sharp, clean sound of a blade splitting the very stone he had just thrown in half. He slides into position, his focus razor-sharp. Santa Claus? He hasn't heard that one in a long time. There aren't any jolly old men delivering toys in this world. He rushes straight into a crowded neighborhood, but the target completely vanishes. His eyes sweep across the surroundings, and slowly, a suspicion begins to form in Ivan's mind. That voice from earlier belonged to a kid, and chances are, the person who was just tailing Ivan is a possessor, someone who doesn't belong in the original script of this world. Later, he makes his way over to the counterintelligence command building. A security guard spots a gardener wandering through a restricted zone and starts getting suspicious. The guard draws his weapon, yelling at Ivan to freeze. Ivan doesn't hesitate. He closes the distance in a heartbeat and grabs the gun. He disarms the man in one smooth motion and pins him to the ground. He takes a second to observe the guy's form. At least the security here is well trained. Suddenly, a whole squad of plainclothes agents appears with their weapons drawn. Ivan stays calm and tells the guard to go find a man named Dmitri. The guard is stunned that a random gardener knows his superior. He finally drops his name, Ivan Petrovich. He wants to know if there's any old blood from the extermination unit still in the building. The guard's face turns pale as the name sinks in. The rest of the team starts to lower their guns, the tension in the room shifting instantly. The man can barely get a word out, his voice shaking. He looks at the gardener and sees the ghost of a legendary officer he thought was dead. He snaps into a deep bow, introducing himself as Osip Sornov. He was a member of the 3rd Strike Team and had only ever seen the legendary lieutenant colonel from a distance. Ivan extends a hand, telling the man not to mourn those who fell first. He considers himself just another member of their ranks anyway. Osip takes his hand, still in total shock. He'd seen Ivan's name on a memorial stone years ago. Ivan just nods. He didn't expect to find any survivors from the 3rd Strike Team here either. Osip laments how the finest men of their era are gone. Only a few of them were lucky enough to make it out alive. Ivan snaps him back to reality, ordering him to bring Dmitri over immediately. He needs the full list of everyone attending the ceremony: students, staff, VIPs, and all their relatives. He doesn't want any names missing from that list. Every last one. Osip snaps a salute, ready to carry out the order of his legendary superior. He immediately starts barking orders at his men to notify Lieutenant Colonel Cherkatov about the emergency. Ivan watches them go, his mind already back on his target, the possessor. He examines the stones in his hand. Whoever that kid was, they had some high-level swordsmanship skills. He remembers that voice calling him a Black Santa Claus. Sounded young, probably a kid whose voice hadn't even dropped yet. He'd need to hear them again to be sure of anything else. But those reflexes, that kid definitely has line of fire detection. He wonders if they're Korean, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that they're an Earthling who somehow got dropped into this mess. Maybe they were just some disgruntled reader who left a 5,000-word hate review on a novel. Or maybe they got hit by the classic reincarnation truck. Or they're the original author themselves. But there's one thing he's absolutely sure of. This kid knows the original work is an academy story, which is why they're hanging around the university. And if they know the story, they know what's coming next, which means they must know how it all ends. He's curious now. He wants to know if his own ending is written in some book he's never read. Step 1 is tracking down that possessor and getting some answers. Meanwhile, Yevgeny is getting chewed out by his father, Lord Novikov. The old man calls him worthless just for taking a bathroom break during the ceremony. Yevgeny's miserable, stuck in a family he knows nothing about and getting treated like trash. He's still shaking from his encounter with that monster gardener. Suddenly, a status window flickers into existence in front of him. A new quest has just been triggered. His eyes go wide as he reads the notification. It's a rank quest involving the gardener of St. Jansk University. The requirement: defeat Gardener Ivan. The optional part: just survive. Then he sees the penalty for failure: death. He's absolutely losing it. A cafe in downtown Prichinkaya. Osip Sornov mentions it's a bit risky for them to be meeting in a public spot like this. He keeps complaining while they head up the stairs, guessing Ivan must be in a serious hurry to call him out. Ivan doesn't slow his pace. They enter a room filled with seated officers. Osip tells everyone to stay calm and just act natural. The officers go back to their chatter as the two men take a seat. Osip asks what exactly he brought that has him so worked up. Ivan pulls out a bundle of explosives and slams it right onto the table. Osip freezes, his face going pale. Ivan casually mentions he already pulled the detonator, but that doesn't stop Osip from shouting at him for the heart attack. He starts explaining the mana charge inside. He figures the device is too weak to destroy a building, meaning it was likely just a distraction for a separate unit. Osip agrees and orders the bomb sent over to the magic department for further analysis. He hands over a brown folder Ivan requested, admitting it wasn't easy to get on such short notice. He adds that Her Excellency wants a meeting, but Ivan turns down the invitation immediately. The veteran stands up and heads out without another word. Osip and a blonde staff member watch him leave, commenting on how the reputation of Little Ivan is well-deserved. Osip figures the guy is just too gloomy from living all by himself. He half jokes that Ivan really needs to go on a date. But business is business. He orders his men to put a tail on him. Ivan walks off into the rain, left to his own devices for now. Later, in a darkened room, Ivan reviews the university rosters. He notes there are about 300 freshmen enrolled this year. Adding in the rest of the undergraduates brings the student total to 1,000. Factoring in all the faculty and staff, he's looking at 1,700 people. He figures he needs to check the families of every freshman who attended the ceremony, too. With the addition of foreign dignitaries, the list of suspects grows to over 2,400. He's certain a transmigrator is hiding somewhere in that group. He knows how they work, using their prior knowledge to build connections and secure their future. Whether they're spreading modern culture or stealing secret techniques, they always act like some story protagonist. He despises how they treat the people in this world like objects in a game. To them, it's probably all just some well-crafted theme park. Now that the war he fought is over, they just want to enjoy their academy life. He can't stand that they don't care about the lives they see as background lore. Finding them won't be easy, but he's dedicated to the hunt. Morning comes to the university. The rosters and personal details are laid out, with a sharp blade resting right on top of them. Outside, students are relaxing at the picnic tables. Esides runs over, waving enthusiastically to her friend Isabel. She's excited to show off what she has. She introduces herself to Yuri Frank, who gives a polite greeting in return. Esides tells the girls they can just call her by her first name. She explains that her surname basically just means Dad's daughter. The poor girl is moved to tears, admitting this is the first time anyone has ever treated her like a normal person instead of a princess. Isabel explains that the reason Esides was so lonely is simple. Nobody wanted to get anywhere near her uncle. We get a glimpse of the guy, a massive, terrifying bodyguard who looks like he'd tear a person in half just for saying hello. With a guardian that intimidating looming over her, Esides' social life was essentially non-existent. She starts crying again, mourning the loss of her youth and her college life, thanks to her overprotective family. Esides thanks Isabel for being such a good friend, but Isabel tells her she should really be thanking Yuri. She mentions that Yuri is actually a big deal, a full-ride scholarship student in their department. Isabel even admits that Yuri is insanely good with a sword, likely better than any of them. Yuri just brushes it off as luck, unaware that Ivan is watching their entire conversation from a nearby tree. From his perch, Ivan eyes the group, Isabel, Esides, and the star freshman. He focuses in on his main target, Yuri Frank. Her file lists her as an orphan, a common background for students who name themselves after the war. He notes that while Yuri Frank is a standard name in Krasilov, there's a cultural inconsistency. In this world, Yuri is strictly a male name. The only countries where Yuri is used as a female name are Korea and Japan back on Earth. Ivan concludes that she's a prime candidate for being a transmigrator. Suddenly, he hears a girl calling out for another student nearby. The student is Yevgeny Novikov-Karamzin, who's currently lugging a mountain of books. He tells his classmate he's heading to a biblical hermeneutics orientation and has a ton of reading to get through. He sighs, regretting choosing the theology department now that he sees how much work it is. Yevgeny feels like he's being watched and looks over his shoulder. He spots the unhinged gardener from before, seemingly stalking him while trimming branches. The shears snap shut, a sharp sound that definitely doesn't help Yevgeny's nerves. Ivan's glowing blue eyes lock onto the kid's gaze. Yevgeny freezes, realizing they just made eye contact. Ivan is impressed. He was tailing the boy from a good distance, yet Yevgeny still managed to notice him. He checks the file for Yevgeny Novikov-Karamzin. The name seems normal for this world, but the root of it tells a different story. Yevgeny translates to Eugene, another name that is incredibly common in Korea. Ivan considers just snatching the kid for an interrogation right then and there. He decides against it, knowing he needs to handle this without causing a scene. He leaps away into the shadows, but Ivan isn't the only one doing the stalking. A sniper scope is currently trained on his head. The shooter watches him, wondering what exactly the old veteran is up to this time. A sharp tang sound rings out as Ivan detects a presence nearby. He looks up, his gaze locking onto a roof across the way. He isn't surprised by what he sees. He knows that stare. It's Enrique, his former mentor. She smiles and asks what he's doing skulking around. She calls him her disciple and tells him they're heading back to his place. She wants to take a look at his orphanage while she's in town. Night falls as they move out. They arrive at the St. Vasilicia orphanage and head straight for the director's office. Enrique looks around, her expression unreadable as she follows Ivan inside. Enrique picks up a sheet of paper from Ivan's desk, scanning his meticulous analysis of the target's speech patterns. She notes that Ivan even went as far as to infer accents based on bone structure, creating a list of possible regions of origin. She drops the paper, looking at him with a mixture of confusion and genuine concern. Enrique surveys the room, which is filled with strings and notes, wondering what he's been doing with his time. She points out that Ivan has never put this much effort into anything, not even when tracking high-profile international criminals. She's stunned that he's spent days without sleep, obsessing over a mere student entirely on his own. Enrique leans back on the desk, nodding that former soldiers like him often turn into unstable time bombs when they lose their way. She swirls a flask of green liquid, her expression grim as she thinks about the toll the war took on men like Ivan. She reminds him that he's still human and needs basic things like food, sleep, and rest to function properly. Ivan cuts her off, staring at the floor. He coldly tells her that she simply wouldn't understand his motivation. Suddenly, Enrique loses her patience and grabs Ivan by the front of his coat, yanking him toward her. She stares him down with her glowing eyes, demanding that he stop the games and just tell her the truth. Ivan doesn't flinch. He takes a breath and decides to explain his situation through a hypothetical story. He asks her to imagine a person who exists in a world that isn't their own, someone who left their entire life behind. He describes someone who was suddenly dropped into a strange land, waking up in a place they've never seen before. No matter how hard they try to wake up, the world continues to feel like a fictional story they can't escape. They struggle to survive, using their innate talents to adapt to the harsh reality of their new life. But even after decades of struggle, they're left wondering why their story never seems to reach its conclusion. Then, out of nowhere, another person appears, someone from that same lost hometown. A figure looms in the distance, a total outsider from the exact same place the first person came from. Ivan starts to wonder if that newcomer is the actual protagonist of this world's narrative. He envisions the newcomer as a warrior standing amidst a field of defeated monsters, the true focal point of the story. He worries that once this protagonist sees the ending, secondary players like Ivan will simply be discarded. He contemplates the terrifying possibility that his entire existence was just a trivial mistake made by a god. Back in the present, Enrique processes his words, her expression softening into pure shock. She realizes Ivan is telling her that he is one of these transmigrators. Ivan confirms the impossible truth. He explains that he's found another one, and believes he has to eliminate them to protect his place in this world. Enrique places a hand on his shoulder, though her face remains grim as she looks into his eyes. She reveals a secret of her own. Ivan isn't the first transmigrator she's ever encountered in her long life. Ivan is stunned as she prepares to name the famous figure she once knew. The name she speaks is one that shakes Ivan to his core, Hero Maximilian. She tells Ivan to listen carefully as she explains the history of their kind in this world. Maximilian, the legendary hero, was also a dragged one from another reality. She explains that whenever the balance of the world shifts, people like them tend to appear out of nowhere. They are the outsiders who are dragged across dimensions rather than being born into this world. Enrique explains that this is why historical records never say a hero was born, only that he appeared. While historical records are scarce, it's said that every one of them brought a unique story with them from their world. These stories manifest as myths, novels, or even things as strange as the technology and items of their old world. Each of these individuals followed their own narrative arc toward an inevitable personal ending. Some simply vanished when their task was done. Some died in the line of duty, and others chose to stay. Ivan realizes the terrifying implication of her words as he thinks of Maximilian. If Maximilian saw his story through to the end, then his retirement was actually a final conclusion to his role. Ivan ponders the possibility of finally returning to reality after all these years. He grips his head as a realization washes over him, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and dread. He reflects on the fact that everyone in this world has their own story and their own inevitable ending. Ivan closes his eyes, plagued by the terrifying question of whether there's any way for him to return home. He wonders if the only way for his own personal story to end is through death. He considers the chilling possibility that his return might only come once his life reaches its final chapter. He asks himself if simply dying is the key to finally returning to the world he once knew. Ivan gasps as he's suddenly pulled out of his dark thoughts by a familiar presence. Enrique stands over him, her expression stern as she tells him to pull himself together. She questions if Ivan truly believes that the people of this world are just characters in a story from his original home. She wonders if he thinks his world is the only reality, and this place is merely a fragment of some narrative. Enrique stares him down, demanding to know how he views the people he's met and fought alongside. She asks about the late king who named him, and all those who died before him during the long war. She wonders if they were all nothing more than side characters in what Ivan considers his story. Enrique places her hand on his chest, declaring that they are all just as real and alive as he is. She scoffs at the idea of him being nothing more than a side character in someone else's narrative. She yells that she is the protagonist of her own life, just as Ivan is the center of his own existence. Enrique moves her hand from his chest, her voice softening as she asks if he truly wants to return to his hometown. She looks at him with a mixture of sadness and determination, calling him her disciple. She tells him not to wait for some unseen fate to finish his story for him. She urges him to take control and turn the pages of his own life with his own hands. Ivan looks down, wondering if there is actually anything left for him to decide at this stage of his life. Enrique insists that the choice to turn the next page is entirely his to make, no matter what happens. Bathed in the moonlight, she smiles at him, reminding him that he has a place in this world just like everyone else. Maximilian's old party sits around a campfire, while Enrique explains how the hero missed his family just like anyone else. She stares into the flames, admitting she always felt sorry for him and the mysterious fate he had to face. Enrique shifts her gaze to Ivan, nodding how he's been carrying the weight of his world completely alone for decades. Looking around his dark, cluttered office, she points out that he doesn't even have a bedroom to rest in. She calls him out for acting like everyone else is just a side character, while stubbornly refusing to be the hero himself. A memory of a younger, war-torn Ivan flashes by, stuck in the belief that he could never be the protagonist. Enrique reaches up and shuts off the lamp, telling him it's finally time to get some sleep. She promises to stand the night watch for him, offering to do it every single night if that's what it takes. A montage of Ivan's difficult life plays out, showing him surviving from childhood through years of brutal war. Outside the university, the night is quiet as Ivan realizes that his long, painful prologue has finally come to an end. He closes his eyes, finding that Enrique's harsh truths don't even make him angry anymore. Her hand rests gently on his shoulder, and the simple warmth of it helps break through his defenses. As Enrique holds him close, Ivan finally lets go and drifts off into a deep, peaceful sleep. His mind drifts back to when he was 16, just 2 years after he was first thrown onto the battlefield. An explosion rocks the ground as a younger Ivan sprints through the fire and chaos of the northern front. He's completely out of options, with his sword shattered and not a single bullet left in his kit. With nothing but a scavenged spear, he tears through a group of demons in a desperate rush. He slides through the dirt, his movements driven purely by the instinct to survive another day. He drives the spear straight through a demon's chest, blood spraying across the mud. His blue eyes glow with a cold, sharp light as he searches for the next enemy in the smoke. Ivan carves a path through the enemy lines, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. He stands amidst the carnage, his boots soaked in blood as the fighting finally starts to die down. Breathing hard, he looks over the mountain of corpses he piled up all by himself. In the distance, a royal flag flutters in the morning air as the reinforcements finally arrive. A powerful voice calls out, telling him he fought well, and the young soldier looks up in utter shock. It's King Ivan the Great, sitting atop a massive white horse and looking down at the blood-stained boy. The king tells him to turn around and witness the results of his hard work. Ivan looks back at the dead, spotting a stuffed bunny lying in the mud near one of the bodies. The massive king dismounts, standing tall beside the exhausted and bloody teenager. He gently places a hand on the boy's shoulder and tells him to raise his eyes. Ivan looks up, his eyes wide as he realizes the king himself is acknowledging him. The king explains that they expected a total defeat here, but the boy's stand changed the entire war. He points toward the horizon, showing that the nearby villages are safe because of his courage. The king officially calls him by name, acknowledging the weight of everything he saved that day. He tells the boy to stand tall and puff out his chest, giving him the nickname Little Ivan. The king laughs, nodding that he earned the name Ivan the Great at that same age. He turns to his elite guard and orders them to take the child and train him properly. The king promises that once Ivan becomes strong enough to stand on his own, they'll meet again. 5 years later, the king kept that promise when Ivan was officially assigned to the royal guard. From that day on, the name Little Ivan became a title of honor that he carried with immense pride. Back in the present, Ivan sleeps soundly without a single nightmare for the first time in years. Seeing the late king in his dreams gave him the peace he needed to sink into a deep, restful sleep. Back in the university, Yevgeny's vision is flooded with a massive warning. His current quest has been abruptly canceled. The system notification tells him he's caught the eye of the academy's gardener, wishing him luck in a situation that feels like a death sentence. A final message pops up, claiming miraculous luck stopped his fate and allowed him to survive the encounter. Yevgeny loses it in the middle of class, grabbing his head and screaming for an explanation from the system that just failed him. He's been in this world for a while now, living as the legendary sword genius of a high-ranking noble family. On his very first day, he reached level 51 in sword mastery, a feat that should have made him untouchable by any other freshman. But after seeing Ivan, he realized there was a level of power he couldn't even quantify, and there was no way he could ever win. Sitting in a room full of level 8 and 9 students, the gap between the rest of the world and that gardener feels impossible. Yevgeny can't wrap his head around why a simple gardener would have a hidden level that his system can't even read. In any game or story he knew, a hidden level only meant one thing: the person had far exceeded the limits of a normal human. The professor continues her lecture, but Yevgeny finds it impossible to trust the logic of a world that's already breaking its own rules. He realizes the story he's in doesn't even mention key players like the Demon King or the hero's party. Even the geography is wrong, since the country he's in is already in the north, making his Northern Duke title completely redundant. The only things that feel familiar are the status window and his skill tree, which are the only anchors he has left. He tries to take a breath, feeling relieved the quest is gone, but terrified that he has no idea what kind of world he's actually in. Meanwhile, outside in the garden, the sound of wood splintering echoes through the trees. Ivan is moving at a speed that defies logic, using his gardening tools to carve through logs like they're made of paper. Chunks of wood fly through the air as he works with a cold, mechanical efficiency. A pair of high-heeled boots stops right in front of him. Enrique looks down at the mess he's made of the logs. Ivan asks if it's past her bedtime, and Enrique shoots back with a joke about him being surprised to see such a handsome man. She can see the exhaustion on his face, nodding that his lack of sleep is clearly starting to get to him. Ivan stays low, admitting that the manual labor of being a gardener is actually the best thing for his mental health right now. Enrique isn't interested in his excuses, telling him she has a very different kind of prescription for his fatigue. She reaches down and grabs his hand, dragging him along because she needs an extra pair of hands for her next task. They arrive at the university gymnasium, a massive brick building that looms over the campus. Enrique hops onto a stage and introduces herself as the professor for the university's mandatory survival class. The students stare in confusion. Isabel and the others recognize the man standing behind her as the simple gardener from before. Enrique sits back with a smirk and points a finger at Ivan, ordering the entire class to try and take him down.